Diana Cortes, a City Solicitor of the City of Philadelphia. So what that means is that I'm the Chief Legal Officer of the City of Philadelphia, all of its different city officials. Anytime there is a lawsuit filed against the city, my office defends that particular lawsuit, or anytime that the city wants to initiate a lawsuit against any type of entity, another set of attorneys take that task on. Preemption, it can happen at different levels of government. You would have federal preemption, state preemption, essentially saying that the higher level of government has passed a law that essentially anything locally that falls within that law's parameters is not valid. So essentially the higher state or the higher federal government rules in that particular area or for that particular matter. So with the firearm preemption laws in particular, it's 18 PA's code section 6120. It says that no county, municipality, or township may in any manner regulate the lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms. So what a lot of different courts have ruled is that that is very broad as to what is lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms. So it really prevents Philadelphia and other municipalities in Pennsylvania, if they did want to pass something regarding the lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms. Essentially, this particular statute says they cannot, because the state is the one who has that authority. So I guess a long way of saying it's when that higher level of government has dictated that they have the sole control and power to pass laws on a particular matter. Philadelphia, like many other cities across the country, need to take matters into their own hands in dealing with the unprecedented surge in gun violence. In Pennsylvania in particular, we have 2 firearm preemption laws that are literally handcuffed, no pun intended, Philadelphia and every other municipality that wants to have more control over the regulation of firearms. Essentially, these 2 firearm preemption laws prevent Philadelphia from passing or actually enforcing legislation that makes sense for Philadelphia. So 2 examples of that are the permit to purchase laws that we currently have on the books, Philadelphia Code section 10814, and the other one is the 1 gun per month limit, and that is in our Philadelphia Code 10831. So if we were allowed to enforce these laws, we would be able to civilly prosecute people who are currently in violation of that. Right now, that would be, I think, a great tool for the city to try to attack the flow of guns into Philadelphia, which I think we've heard from many people throughout this year and in years past that that's a key component that is missing in this fight against gun violence. So based on that, we teamed up with Hogan Lovells, our pro bono counsel, and the Public Interest Law Center in coming up with this very creative and ambitious lawsuit. And so essentially we are suing the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the General Assembly, and 2 state representatives and stating that we are asking the court to declare these 2 firearm preemption laws unconstitutional. We are saying that they violate the Section 1 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which allows everyone, actually authorizes everyone to enjoy life and liberty. And so what we're saying is that these 2 firearm preemption statutes are creating the state-created danger and preventing people from enjoying life and liberty here in Pennsylvania. The other claim that we have is that these two firearm preemption laws violate the substantive due process. And the third one is that it is an interference with the delegation under a health code that essentially, as we all have seen in Philadelphia in particular the past 2 years, this is a public health crisis. Gun violence is a public health crisis. So these two firearm prevention statutes are, again, hamstringing not just the city, but also in particular the health department in violation of this particular statute. That's one of the arguments that our defendants in this case brought up. Essentially, you all tried this many times before and you all failed, so why are you here again? The answer is that this time it's different. This time the legal theory is very different. Like I said, it's creative, ambitious. Essentially what we're doing here is attacking the law itself. As opposed to the lawsuits in the past, what was done was that we weren't attacking the validity or unconstitutionality of the law itself, these two firearm preemption laws. What we were saying in the past was, here is, this slew of local gun prevention laws. They fit within the exceptions of these firearm preemption laws. And the courts had said no, saying that the firearm preemption laws were very broad. So what we would say here is we're not challenging that. What we're challenging is, again, the validity and constitutionality of those two firearm preemption laws. So from our perspective, it is the same cast of characters, if you will, in this litigation, but it's a different legal theory. No, that's a great question. And in our petition/complaint, one of the reasons we focus on the permit to purchase and the 1 gun per month limit is because compared to cities in other states that don't have these preemption laws, they have done studies that show that there's a significant positive effect on the decrease in gun violence in these other cities. So for example, Michigan, when they had a similar permit to purchase licensing law, once they repealed it, there was a sharp increase in police recovering guns in that state sale. So it rose from like 56.5% to 71.8%. And this is all in our 88-page complaint that goes through like all this different data. There was also another review of firearm laws in I think it's 136 large U.S. urban counties from 1984 through 2015, and they found that permit to purchase laws were associated with an 11% reduction in firearm homicides during that time period. So though that shows you that in those states where there's no preemption laws or they're not interpreted the same way that the Pennsylvania courts have done that, I think we look at that to show that there is a great opportunity here to really reduce that gun violence. If the Commonwealth Court dismissed the lawsuit because we had oral argument and banc in front of the entire Commonwealth Court, that was on June 9th. So if we're not successful there, we would likely appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and then we would see what would happen then. I recently met up with a number of city solicitors, city attorneys in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and everyone who was there from all these different cities had the same concern. Like, we're dealing with this unprecedented surge in gun violence, and everyone is, trying to come up with that, as you said, recipe, and nobody has come up with it yet. I think what we have here is a good start. I think the fact that you have the entire all these different city officials recognizing how important it is to resolve this issue. I think that's the first step, that commitment. Our city council did push to have $100 million invested in gun violence and gun violence prevention. And then, we have our law enforcement partners of the DA's office and the police commissioner and the police department working together to address, because as much as you have in prevention, you have to also address what's happening now. And unfortunately, I don't know when we would start to see the fruits of those prevention efforts. I think hopefully we see them in the near future, but what are we doing with the present? And I think that's where the law enforcement piece is really critical. So I think a long way of saying I don't know what this recipe is. I think what we're starting to put together now, again, is a good start. And I think everyone just has to have an open mind and have that same commitment and investment to reassess the recipe as we're working together, trying different things, and hopefully we can add a very strong ingredient with a success in this lawsuit. But we will have to wait a while for that, because this, like I said, this argument just occurred on June 9th. So we'll have to wait for a decision and see how, where we go from there. But we are hopeful.